The pipe under our kitchen sink had been dripping for 3 weeks, and at 2 in the morning, lying awake listening to that rhythmic torture, I finally snapped. Sarah was gone to the world beside me, her breathing deep and even like she didn't have a care in the world, which, as it turned out, she didn't. I slipped out of bed, grabbed my toolbox from the garage, and got to work. The house was quiet except for that damn drip and the occasional creak of settling wood. I'd always been good with my hands, had to be, working as a systems analyst for a mid-sized tech company in Columbus. When you spend your days troubleshooting other people's problems, you develop a certain methodical approach to fixing things. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The pipe was worse than I thought. Water had been seeping into the cabinet, warping the bottom panel. I pulled everything out, cleaning supplies, dish soap, and Sarah's travel bag from her last business trip. The bag was still packed, which was weird. She'd been back for 3 days. Curiosity got the better of me. I unzipped it, expecting to find dirty clothes and conference swag. Instead, I found a pharmacy bag tucked into the side pocket. Birth control pills. The expensive kind. I'd had a vasectomy 2 years ago. Sarah knew this. Hell, she'd driven me to the appointment and held ice packs on my crotch for a week afterward. Funny thing, I muttered to myself. I'm about as fertile as the Gobi Desert. The pills were nearly empty. She'd been taking them religiously. But why? Unless... My hands shook as I examined the packaging. Prescribed just last month, right around the time she started taking all those business trips to Cleveland for strategic partnerships with other tech firms. I sat back on my heels, staring at those little pink pills. 23 years of marriage, and this is how I find out my wife is cheating on me, in a soggy cabinet at 2 in the morning. The rage came slowly, building like pressure in a boiler. Sarah had always been the ambitious one, climbing the corporate ladder at her software company while I stayed steady in my analyst role. I'd supported her, encouraged her, celebrated every promotion, and this is how she repaid me. I looked at those pills again, then at the bottle of heavy-duty laxatives we kept for our elderly dog's constipation issues. They were about the same size and color. Good luck at the conference, sweetheart, I whispered, making the switch. Sarah left for Cleveland the next morning, kissing me goodbye like nothing had changed. She looked beautiful in her navy business suit, her blonde hair pulled back in that severe bun she wore for important meetings. I watched from the kitchen window as she loaded her bag into her BMW, the same bag where I'd found the pills. Drive safe, I called out, waving like the devoted husband I'd been for over 2 decades. The moment her car disappeared around the corner, I was on her laptop. Sarah had always been careless with passwords. She used the same one for everything, our anniversary date. Within minutes, I was scrolling through her email. Most of it was boring work stuff, but then I found a folder labeled Project Phoenix. Inside were messages that made my stomach turn, explicit exchanges between Sarah and someone named Lucas Grant. The timestamps showed they had been going on for months. Lucas was apparently her company's strategic partner from a Cleveland firm. The messages were graphic, detailed, and left no doubt about what had been happening during those business trips. But there was more. Financial records showing transfers to an account I didn't recognize. Sarah had been moving our money around. I printed everything, my hands shaking with rage. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I installed tracking software on her phone. If Sarah wanted to play games, I'd make sure I knew all the rules. By noon, I was in my car, following the GPS signal to Cleveland. The drive gave me time to think, to plan. Sarah thought she was so smart, so careful. She had no idea what she'd unleashed. The signal led me to the Marriott downtown, one of those glass towers that screamed corporate expense account. I parked across the street and waited. At 2:30, Sarah emerged from the lobby with a man who had to be Lucas Grant. Tall, silver-haired, expensive suit. They weren't trying to hide anything. His hand was on her back. She was laughing at something he said. I took photos with my phone, zooming in on their faces. Then I watched them get into a silver Mercedes with Ohio plates. I memorized the license number and followed at a distance as they drove to an upscale restaurant. They sat by the window, sharing appetizers and wine like they were celebrating something. Sarah's hand covered his across the table. She was wearing the diamond earrings I'd given her for our anniversary last year. That's when I decided to leave my first calling card. I walked to the Mercedes and slipped a note under the windshield wiper. Smile for the cameras, lovers. Your husband says hello. I was walking back to my car when someone called my name. Ethan Miller, is that you? I turned to see a woman in her 40s, brunette, sharp-featured. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. I'm Jenna Alvarez, she said, extending her hand. Sarah's boss. What brings you to Cleveland? Sarah's boss was here? Had she seen me leave the note? Just business, I managed. Didn't know Sarah was in town. Jenna's smile was cold, knowing. Oh yes, she and Lucas have been working very closely on our partnership deal. Very intimately involved in the details. The way she said it made my skin crawl. She knew. She knew about the affair, and she was enjoying this. Well, I should get going, I said, backing toward my car. Give Sarah my regards, Jenna called after me. Tell her I hope she's feeling well tomorrow. Sometimes these business dinners can be rough on the stomach. Sarah came home the next evening looking pale and shaken. She went straight to bed, claiming she had food poisoning from the hotel restaurant. I brought her tea and toast, playing the concerned husband while she groaned about her stomach cramping. Must have been the seafood, I said sympathetically. You know how risky that can be at hotel restaurants. It was awful, Ethan. I spent half the conference in the bathroom. So embarrassing. I'm sure no one noticed, I lied, knowing full well that the laxatives I'd substituted for her birth control had done their job perfectly. Over the next few days, the gossip started filtering back. Our neighbor Karen, who worked at the same company as Sarah's Cleveland contact, mentioned hearing about some executive who'd had digestive issues during a big presentation. Poor woman, Karen said over the fence while I was checking the mail. Apparently she had to run out of the conference room twice. Someone said it sounded like a war zone in the ladies' room. I made appropriate sympathetic noises while internally celebrating. But this was just the beginning. The weekend brought our neighborhood's monthly barbecue, one of those forced social gatherings that suburban life demands. Sarah had recovered enough to attend, though she was quieter than usual. I watched her make small talk with the other wives, noticed how some of them exchanged glances and whispered when she walked away. Karen cornered me by the grill, her voice low and conspiratorial. I heard more details about that conference incident. Apparently the woman was Sarah Miller. Isn't that your wife's name? Sarah's a common name, I said, flipping burgers with more force than necessary. This Sarah Miller works for TechFlow Solutions and was meeting with Lucas Grant from Strategic Systems. Isn't that who your Sarah was meeting with? How do you know all this? Karen's eyes gleamed with malicious delight. My cousin works in their Cleveland office. She said it was legendary. They're calling it the Bathroom Olympics. Poor thing couldn't stay out of the restroom long enough to finish her presentation. Across the yard, Sarah caught my eye and frowned. She'd noticed Karen talking to me and didn't look happy about it. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from an unknown number. Your husband's got eyes everywhere. We need to talk. L. So Lucas knew I was onto them. Good. Let him sweat. I walked over to Sarah, slipping my arm around her waist possessively. Everything okay, honey? You look tense? Fine, she said through gritted teeth. Just tired. Maybe you should take fewer business trips, I suggested loudly enough for nearby neighbors to hear. All that travel seems to be hard on your system. Sarah's face flushed red. She knew. She knew I knew something. That night, after she'd gone to bed, I sent Lucas a message from an anonymous email account. Mess with my life again, and I'll ruin yours. This is just the beginning. The boxing gym became my refuge. I'd started going there 6 months ago, partly for exercise and partly to escape the growing tension at home. Mike Rodriguez, the owner and head trainer, had become something of a friend. He was ex-military, straightforward, and didn't ask too many questions when I showed up with bruised knuckles from hitting the heavy bag too hard. You're wound tighter than a spring, Mike observed as I wrapped my hands for another session. What's eating you? I told him everything. About Sarah, about Lucas, about the humiliation and betrayal. Mike listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or grunting his understanding. So what's your plan? He asked when I finished. I want them to hurt like they've hurt me. But I want it to be legal, clean. No violence, no criminal stuff. Just consequences. Mike grinned, a predatory expression that reminded me of his military background. You want dirt? You gotta get dirty. But smart dirty. I can help with that. Over the next week, Mike and I developed a strategy. He had contacts, people who could find information, people who could make problems. All perfectly legal, all completely deniable. The first target was Lucas's car. Mike's cousin ran an auto shop and owed him a favor. A little sugar in the gas tank, some sand in the oil reservoir. Nothing permanent, just expensive and inconvenient. While that was being handled, I focused on Sarah's professional life. I'd learned that she was up for a major promotion, competing with 2 other candidates for a VP position. The decision would be made based on her current project, the partnership with Lucas's firm. I started small. Anonymous tips to Sarah's competitors about her frequent trips to Cleveland. subtle suggestions that maybe the partnership was more personal than professional. I created fake social media accounts and began spreading rumors in professional networking groups. Then I got bold. I hacked into Sarah's work Slack account and found a voice memo she'd recorded for herself, venting about her boss Jenna and several colleagues. It was brutal. She called Jenna a manipulative snake and described one coworker as too stupid to breathe. I sent the memo anonymously to everyone in her department. The fallout was immediate. Sarah came home in tears, having been called into HR for a disciplinary meeting. Her promotion was put on hold pending an investigation into unprofessional conduct. "Someone's sabotaging me," she told me, pacing around our living room like a caged animal. "Someone has access to my private files." "That's terrible," I said, not looking up from my newspaper. "Any idea who might want to hurt you?" "It has to be someone at work, maybe Jennifer from accounting. She's always been jealous of my success." I almost laughed. After 23 years of marriage, Sarah still had no idea what I was capable of when pushed too far. My phone buzzed with another message from Lucas. "This has gone far enough. Meet me tomorrow, 7 p.m. Murphy's Bar on 5th Street. Come alone." Perfect. It was time for a face-to-face conversation. Murphy's Bar was the kind of place that catered to blue-collar workers and people who didn't want to be seen. Dark, smoky, with sticky floors, and a bartender who minded his own business. I arrived early and chose a corner booth with a clear view of the entrance. Lucas showed up at exactly 7, looking around nervously before spotting me. He'd traded his expensive suit for jeans and a polo shirt, but he still looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Miller," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Grant," I replied, taking a sip of my beer. "Nice to finally meet face to face." He was older than he'd looked in the photos, maybe 55, with gray at his temples and lines around his eyes. Handsome in that distinguished executive way that probably impressed younger women, like my wife. "This has to stop," he said without preamble. "Whatever game you're playing, it ends now." "Game?" I leaned back in my seat, studying him. "I'm not playing any games, Lucas. I'm just a guy who found out his wife is screwing around and decided to do something about it. Sarah and I, what we have is real. It's not some casual affair." The casual way he said it, like it was perfectly reasonable to steal another man's wife, made my vision go red. "Real? You want to know what's real? 23 years of marriage, a mortgage we've been paying together, a life we built from nothing." "She's not happy, Miller. Hasn't been for years. You can't force someone to love you." That's when I snapped. I reached across the table and slapped him, hard enough that the sound echoed through the bar. Conversation stopped. The bartender looked over with interest. Lucas touched his cheek, shocked. "You crazy bastard." "Mess with my life again and I'll ruin yours," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the rage coursing through me. "I've already started. The car trouble you had last week? That was me. The rumors circulating about your company's ethics? Also me. And that's just the beginning." I stood up, threw a 20 on the table, and leaned down close to his ear. "Sarah thinks someone at work is sabotaging her. She has no idea it's her loving husband. But you know, don't you? You know I'm just getting started." Lucas grabbed my wrist as I turned to leave. "She loves me." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. "She loved me too once. Didn't stop her from destroying it. Your turn." I pulled free and walked out, leaving him sitting there with his red cheek and his expensive conscience. The anonymous email arrived in Sarah's inbox 3 days later. Photos of her and Lucas at the restaurant, entering the hotel together, his hand on her back in the parking lot. The subject line read, "Thought you should know you're being watched." Sarah's scream from the home office brought me running. She was staring at her laptop screen, her face white as paper. "What's wrong?" I asked, the picture of concerned innocence. Someone's been following me, taking pictures." Her voice was barely a whisper. I looked over her shoulder at the photos, making sure my expression showed appropriate shock and confusion. "Sarah, who is this man? Why would someone be taking pictures of you with him?" It's complicated." "Complicated how?" I let my voice rise slightly, adding just the right note of suspicion and hurt. She closed the laptop abruptly. "It's work-related. This person is obviously trying to sabotage the partnership deal." "By taking pictures of you having dinner with a business partner? That seems extreme." Sarah stood up, pacing to the window. "You don't understand the corporate world, Ethan. People will do anything to get ahead." The lie came so easily to her, so smoothly, that I almost admired her skill. Almost. "Maybe you should report it to the police," I suggested. "Stalking is a serious crime." "No." The response was too quick. too panicked. I mean, it's probably nothing, just some competitor trying to cause trouble. I let it drop, but I could see the fear in her eyes. Good. She was finally starting to understand that actions have consequences. Over the next few days, I escalated my campaign. I'd learned from Mike's contacts that Lucas was married to a woman named Patricia, a prominent attorney in Cleveland. She had no idea about his affair with Sarah. I sent Patricia copies of the same photos, along with printouts of some of the more explicit text messages between her husband and my wife. I used an anonymous email account and included a note. Thought you deserved to know what your husband does on his business trips. The results exceeded my expectations. Lucas showed up at our house the next evening, looking haggard and desperate. I answered the door with a smile. Lucas, what a surprise. Sarah didn't mention you were coming by. We need to talk, he said, pushing past me into the living room. Sarah appeared from the kitchen, her face going pale when she saw him. Lucas, what are you doing here? Your husband sent photos to Patricia. She's filing for divorce. I put on my best shocked expression. Photos? What photos? Sarah, what is he talking about? The two of them stared at each other, realizing they were trapped. They couldn't explain the photos without admitting to the affair, but they couldn't deny it either. This is insane, Sarah said finally. Ethan, Lucas is a business partner. Someone's obviously trying to make it look like something it isn't. Then why is his wife filing for divorce? I asked reasonably. Lucas turned to me, his face twisted with rage. You bastard! You know exactly what you've done. I don't know what you're talking about, I said calmly. But I think you should leave. You're obviously upset about your marriage problems, and taking it out on us isn't fair. After he left, Sarah and I had our first real fight in years. She accused me of being suspicious and paranoid. I accused her of being secretive and distant. Neither of us mentioned the obvious truth hanging between us like a loaded gun, but I could see it in her eyes. She knew I was onto them. The question was, what was she going to do about it? The company's annual summer picnic was supposed to be a celebration. TechFlow Solutions had landed several major contracts, and morale was high despite the recent drama surrounding Sarah's disciplinary issues. I'd never attended one of these events before, but Sarah insisted I come. It'll be good for people to see us together, she said, adjusting my tie with the same hands that had been all over Lucas Grant. Show them we're a solid couple. The irony wasn't lost on me. The picnic was held at Riverside Park, with catered food, games for the kids, and enough alcohol to loosen tongues and lower inhibitions. I played the role of the supportive spouse, shaking hands with Sarah's colleagues and making small talk about the weather and the company's prospects. Jenna Alvarez was there, of course, holding court near the bar with several department heads. She caught my eye and raised her glass in a mock toast. There was something predatory about her smile that made my skin crawl. Having fun? Sarah asked, appearing at my elbow with 2 plates of barbecue. Absolutely. Your coworkers are interesting people. Before she could respond, someone tapped the microphone at the makeshift stage. It was the CEO, preparing to give his annual State of the Company address. But as he spoke, I noticed Jenna making her way toward us, her expression unreadable. Sarah, dear, she said, her voice honey-sweet. Could I have a word? They stepped away from the crowd, and I pretended to focus on the CEO's speech while straining to overhear their conversation. What I caught made me freeze. Lucas won't be joining us after all. His wife's attorney? Might be best if you took some time off. Sarah's face went white. She said something I couldn't hear, but Jenna's response was clear enough. I'm sorry, but the board feels it's best for everyone involved. When Sarah returned, she was trembling. We need to go, she said quietly. What happened? I'll tell you in the car. The drive home was silent, except for Sarah's occasional sniffles. Finally, as we pulled into our driveway, she broke down completely. They fired me, she sobbed. 20 years with that company, and they fired me because of rumors and gossip. I turned off the engine and sat there, watching my wife fall apart. Part of me felt vindicated. This was exactly what I'd wanted. But another part, a small part I tried to ignore, felt sorry for her. What rumors? I asked gently. About me and Lucas. People are saying we were having an affair, that the partnership deal was compromised because of personal involvement. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. Ethan, I need you to know. Know what? For a moment, I thought she might confess everything, come clean about the affair, beg for forgiveness, try to salvage what was left of our marriage. Instead, she looked away. Nothing. It's all lies. Professional jealousy. People trying to tear me down because I was successful. Even now, even after losing her job, she couldn't tell me the truth. The small part of me that felt sorry for her died completely. "I believe you," I lied. "We'll get through this together." But we wouldn't. Because while Sarah was crying over her lost career, I was already planning the next phase of my revenge. The legal papers arrived on a Tuesday morning while Sarah was still in bed, recovering from another sleepless night of anxiety and self-pity. I signed for the certified mail and brought the envelope to her with a cup of coffee, playing the supportive husband one last time. "What is it?" she asked, sitting up against the headphones. "Not sure. Looks official." She tore open the envelope, and I watched her face cycle through confusion, shock, and finally terror as she read the contents. Divorce papers. I was suing for dissolution of marriage, citing irreconcilable differences and requesting a 50-50 split of all assets. "Ethan, what is this? What does it look like? You can't be serious. We can work through this." "Work through what, Sarah? Your affair with Lucas Grant? The money you've been moving around behind my back? The lies you've been telling me for months?" She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. "How long have you known?" Long enough to document everything. The hotel receipts, the text messages, the financial transfers. My attorney has copies of all of it." Sarah's hands shook as she set down the papers. "The laxatives, the photos, the rumors at work, that was all you. Took you long enough to figure it out. You destroyed my career, my reputation, my life." I sat down on the edge of the bed, close enough to see the fear in her eyes. "You destroyed our marriage. I just returned the favor." "Ethan, please, we can fix this. I'll end things with Lucas. We can go to counseling. It's too late for that." I stood up, straightening my tie. "I'm going to work. My attorney will be in touch about the asset division. I suggest you get your own lawyer." "Where am I supposed to go? I don't have a job. I don't have any money." "You should have thought of that before you decided to screw around with Lucas Grant." I left her there, crying into her coffee, and drove to work with a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in months. But this wasn't over. Not yet. That evening, I met Mike at the gym for what would be our final planning session. "You sure about this?" he asked as I worked the heavy bag. "Once you pull this trigger, there's no going back." "I'm sure. They wanted to humiliate me, destroy my marriage, make me look like a fool. Now it's their turn." Mike nodded slowly. "What do you need?" "Access to TechFlow's customer database, and a way to contact every major tech blog and industry publication in the Midwest." "That's going to cost you." "I don't care. This is worth every penny." 3 days later, everything was in place. Sarah had moved out, staying with her sister while she looked for a job and an apartment she could afford. Lucas had been forced to resign from his position after his wife's divorce attorney subpoenaed his company's records. Jenna Alvarez thought she'd weathered the storm and was positioning herself for a promotion into Sarah's old role. They had no idea what was coming. The TechFlow Solutions annual gala was the company's biggest event of the year. Held at the downtown Marriott, it was a chance for executives to network, celebrate successes, and show off for potential clients and partners. I hadn't planned to attend, but Jenna Alvarez had personally invited me. "I know things have been difficult with Sarah's departure," she'd said over the phone, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "But you shouldn't have to suffer for her poor choices. Please, come as my guest." I accepted graciously, knowing exactly why she wanted me there. Jenna was positioning herself as the reasonable one, the executive who'd tried to help Sarah but been forced to let her go due to ethical concerns. Having the wronged husband show up would validate her narrative perfectly. I wore my best suit and arrived fashionably late, just as the cocktail hour was winding down. The ballroom was packed with Columbus's tech elite, all schmoozing and posturing in their expensive clothes. I spotted Jenna immediately. She was holding court near the bar, surrounded by board members and potential investors. "Ethan," she called out when she saw me, waving me over with theatrical enthusiasm. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Ethan Miller. His wife Sarah used to work for us before her unfortunate situation." The group murmured polite condolences, clearly uncomfortable with the topic, but too polite to walk away. I played my part perfectly, the dignified husband dealing with his wife's professional disgrace. "Thank you all for your kind words," I said. "Sarah made some poor choices, but I don't want that to reflect badly on TechFlow. This company gave her opportunities she couldn't have found anywhere else." Jenna beamed at me, no doubt thinking she'd played me perfectly. If only she knew what was coming. Dinner was served at 8, followed by the usual round of speeches and awards. I sat at Jenna's table, making polite conversation with her guests while mentally reviewing my timeline. At 9:30, the CEO would take the stage for his keynote address. At 9:45, I would make my move. The moment arrived right on schedule. As the CEO wrapped up his remarks about TechFlow's bright future, I excused myself from the table and walked toward the stage. Several people noticed me moving, but no one tried to stop me. Why would they? I was just the wronged husband, probably wanting to thank the company for their support. I stepped onto the stage as the CEO was leaving, taking the microphone before anyone could react. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the ballroom's sound system. "I'm Ethan Miller, and I have something important to share with you tonight." A murmur ran through the crowd. I could see Jenna at her table, her face going pale as she realized what was happening. 3 months ago, I discovered that my wife Sarah was having an affair with Lucas Grant, a partner in one of TechFlow's most important business relationships. What I didn't know then was how deep the corruption went. The murmur became a buzz of shocked conversation. People were pulling out their phones, recording everything. Perfect. You see, the affair wasn't just personal. Sarah had been embezzling company funds to pay for her luxury lifestyle with Lucas. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, gifts, all paid for with money that should have gone to shareholders and employees. That was a lie, but a believable one. And by the time anyone could verify it, the damage would be done. But here's the really interesting part, I continued, pulling out a manila envelope. The affair wasn't Sarah's idea. She was recruited, seduced, and manipulated by someone who wanted to use her access to company secrets and financial systems. I opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of photographs, images I'd had Mike's contacts create using social media photos and some creative digital editing. They showed Jenna and Lucas together at various locations, looking intimate and conspiratorial. Jenna Alvarez, your current interim VP, orchestrated the entire scheme. She seduced Lucas Grant, convinced him to seduce my wife, and used both of them to embezzle funds and steal client information. When the affair threatened to expose her, she threw Sarah under the bus and positioned herself as the hero who'd uncovered the corruption. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Jenna was on her feet, shouting denials, but her voice was lost in the crowd noise. Security was moving toward the stage, but I wasn't finished. I have copies of financial records, email communications, and witness statements that prove everything I've said tonight. I've already shared them with the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division and the Ohio State Attorney General's office. That was another lie, but it sounded convincing. Jenna Alvarez destroyed my marriage to cover up her crimes. She ruined my wife's career to protect herself. And she would have gotten away with it if she hadn't made one crucial mistake. She underestimated what a man will do when you destroy everything he loves. Security reached the stage, but I stepped away from the microphone willingly. I'd said everything I needed to say. The aftermath was everything I'd hoped for and more. Within hours, the story was trending on social media. Tech blogs picked it up, then mainstream news outlets. TechFlow's stock price plummeted in after-hours trading. Jenna was suspended pending investigation, her reputation in ruins. Lucas called me the next day, screaming threats and accusations. I listened calmly, then hung up on him. Sarah tried to reach me too, but I'd already changed my number. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new apartment across town, reading the morning paper over coffee. The headline made me smile. Former TechFlow executive indicted on fraud charges. Jenna Alvarez had been arrested the previous day, charged with embezzlement and conspiracy. The investigation I'd triggered with my speech had uncovered real corruption, not the fake affair I'd invented, but actual financial crimes she'd been committing for years. Sometimes the best lies are the ones that lead to the truth. Sarah had found a job with a smaller firm, but her reputation never recovered. The tech community in Columbus was small and gossipy, and everyone knew her as the woman who'd been involved in the TechFlow scandal. Lucas had moved to another state after his divorce was finalized, his own career destroyed by association. My doorbell rang, interrupting my morning satisfaction. I opened it to find Mike standing there with a bottle of champagne and a newspaper. "Thought you might want to celebrate," he said, holding up the paper with Jenna's mugshot on the front page. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. Though I'm not sure celebration is the right word. "Why not? You won. They tried to destroy you, and you destroyed them right back." I poured 2 glasses of champagne and handed one to Mike. "You know what the funny thing is? I never set out to be the villain in this story. I just wanted my wife to love me, to be faithful, to honor the vows we made 23 years ago. So what changed?" I thought about that question as I sipped my champagne. What had changed? When did I cross the line from victim to villain? "They made me choose," I said finally. "Be the fool who forgives and forgets, or be the monster who fights back. They assumed I'd take the high road, be the better man, let them get away with it. But you didn't." "No, I didn't. I decided that if they wanted a villain, I'd give them one they'd never forget." Mike raised his glass in a toast. To getting even. To getting even, I agreed, clinking my glass against his. After Mike left, I sat alone in my apartment, thinking about the path that had brought me here. I'd lost my wife, my marriage, and most of my old friends. But I'd also gained something, a sense of justice, of balance restored. Sarah had called me a monster during our final conversation, right before the divorce was finalized. She'd accused me of being cruel, vindictive, and heartless. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had become the villain in this story. But if being the villain meant that cheaters faced consequences, that liars got exposed, and that people who destroyed other people's lives got destroyed in return, then I could live with that. I raised my glass to my reflection in the apartment window, a solitary figure in a room full of shadows. They wanted a villain, I said to my reflection. Well, I gave them a show they'll never forget.